Just seeing the victims of crime. I have, every day I get an update on what occurred last night, or sometimes I get calls at home in the middle of the night advising me of crime, and I just keep seeing it going up, and it's alarming, and I'm frightened. I'm frightened for the city, and I'm frightened for the country. And if we don't start looking at this through an objective lens, we're going to get ourselves in trouble. And I want to speak out for the victims of crime. I have a story of a young woman in Southwest Fresno who was watching television with her husband and doing nothing wrong. And a bullet came through the house and hit her in the head, and she may be paralyzed for the rest of her life. And these are the types of victims that I think it's important that I speak out for, because that's who I represent. And I'm just not hearing that from a lot of our community leaders.
Was that recent in that since April you said this spike has been happening? Was it within that time frame?
Yeah, it's only probably a couple weeks old. And it's bothered me since it's happened.
So talk about this increase. What are you seeing in this large jump? Can it be explained? Is it something you guys have seen before, or is this a separate thing that you're seeing now?
Well, no, it's very alarming, and you can almost draw a line on it. April, if you look at the start of April, when they started releasing prisoners back on our street, and they started having zero bail, so even if we do catch somebody, they don't go to jail. We've seen a huge spike in crime, and not just crime, but violent crime. Shootings where weapons are used are up 70%, and stabbings where people are cut are up over 60%. And those numbers should frighten everyone in the community. And it's not just here in Fresno. This is occurring across the country, and we need to get a handle on it.
So you mentioned the zero bail thing as being part of the reason. I know you mentioned a couple more things in your post. What are some of the other reasons?
Well, there's lots of reasons. I mean, they've let out 18,000 prisoners. Those aren't county prisoners. Those are federal or the state prisoners. And you have to do a lot to go to a state prison. I mean, those aren't people that are doing petty crimes. These are people that have a history of crime that are being allowed back in our street. Our officers risk their lives to put those people into custody. The DA's office has spent countless hours prosecuting them, and the taxpayers have paid millions of dollars to incarcerate these people, only to be let back onto the street and victimize our community again.
You also mentioned the attacks on the police profession too. Can you talk about that a little?
Well, that's disturbing as well. We have some of our community leaders out there, some people who actually sit on the commission that are advocating violence. And that should be a disqualifier if we're going to truly look at police reform. That concerns me as a police officer. And I think my job right now is to be that voice for the officers who go out there day to day, risk their lives, and are away from their families at night and on the weekends, protecting this community. And the silent voices of the community that needs to start speaking up. And I'm going to be that voice right now.
And you're referring to the Police Reform Commission, some of the people on there?
I am. Some of those have been very vocal, anti-police sentiment, and I do not believe that's healthy if we're going to actually move forward. Listen, the police department's not perfect, and we can do better, and we want to do better. We work for the community, and when a commissioner and when one of the members of the commission comes out with such an anti-police bias, it makes communication difficult, and it makes moving forward difficult. And I think we all, my officers, the community, we all want to move forward. And I want more community policing. I would love to have officers on a walking beat, bicycles and horse patrols. But that costs money. And that's not the direction a lot of these people on the commission want to go right now.
Anyone specific on the commission, or you said elected official? Anyone specific?
Well, I don't want to name names. This isn't about retaliation. What I want to remind our elected officials and members, leaders unquote, quote unquote, in the community, to remind them that these officers, they're part of this community. They live and they work in this community. They raise their family. Their kids go to school here in this community. And to when you're talking about something that happened across the country, that's not fair. That's not fair to this community. I'm willing to accept criticism of the Fresno Police Department, but I'm not willing to take responsibility for something that occurred on the other side of the country that we don't support and we condemn just as violently as they do.
I have seen, I mean, we look at the Facebook page all the time. There's been a lot of pictures of the officers being engaged with the community, especially the young people, the children in the communities. I saw the special response team shifted focus into that. Can you talk about some of the things that your department is doing?
Well, I'm a big supporter of community policing. I think it should be our core value. We've been trying to do community policing for as long as I've been a police officer, over 40 years. The problem is it requires a lot of resources to do that. We still have to respond to calls for service. We have over almost 9,000 911 calls every month, and an additional 11,000 non-emergency calls that we have to respond to every month. Those take priority. And I would love to be able to pull my officers off patrol and put them into the community and get them out there. And when I can do that, we do that. I'd like to have a better commitment with that, but that takes resources and that takes money because we have to hire more cops. And that's not the direction a lot of people, a lot of quote unquote leaders in our community are recommending right now.
Yeah, so how does that change that? What do people need to do, or what do the leaders need to do to change that?
Well, what I think is important right now is that our leaders and our elected officials hear from the community. This is your community, and you get to have the police department and the city that you want. We need to hear the support from the silent majority in our community that are out there working every day and taking their kids to school and mowing their yards and putting their kids to bed every day. Just trying to get by. We need to hear from them. And the politicians and our elected officials and our community leaders need to hear from that community now more than ever, or it's going to get away from us and it's going to be very difficult to get back.
Anything else you wanted to say? Any other points you wanted to make?
Well, listen. I'm a big proponent. I hope that we can move forward with community policing. I hope that I can get the resources to put dedicated officers out in the community. I think that is the future. Always has been a police work. However, we need to respond. We need to be able to respond to crime and reduce crime in our neighborhoods, because you can't be a community if you're afraid to come outside. We need to support our officers, and we need to hold people accountable. We need to be able to hold people accountable. If somebody's going to go shoot somebody or stab somebody, we need to put them in prison or in jail and take them out of the community so that this community can thrive. And that's my concern, is that that's not the direction we're going right now. Okay, why I posted what I posted. Well, I think it's important for the public to understand what's going on in their city. Every night as a chief of police, I get briefed on crime that occurs on the previous night. Every morning I get a call and a briefing. Sometimes I get woken up in the middle of the night. And what I'm seeing is an alarming trend of violent crime in our city. And not only in Fresno, but across the nation. And I think it's important for chiefs of police to speak out, because no one is speaking out right now on behalf of police departments or the victims of crime. And I think that's my role, is to speak up for our officers, to let the community know what we do and what's in our heart, and to also speak up for the victims of crime. And I'll give you a quick example of that. I had a young woman, about 26 years old. She was watching television on the couch with her husband, and an exchange of gunfire occurred down the street from her between rival gangs. Bullet went through the house and hit her in the head. She will be paralyzed likely for the rest of her life. She will never be able to hold her children again. I've got to speak out for those victims. Those are the people that are being silenced right now in this conversation. And we have a commission that is working on defunding a police department. And I think it's important that the community understand what that means. And if you look at from April, when they started releasing prisoners back onto our street, and they initiated a zero bail policy across this state, in Fresno, violent crime shootings have gone up over 70%, and stabbings over 60%, and those should alarm everyone.
Are there statistics in comparison to the same months last year or in comparison to March, February?
The comparison that I'm giving you is the months before the zero bail and then the months after. So the weekly rates of incidents have skyrocketed in the city of Fresno.
So you had mentioned in the Judicial Council of California report, it says that crime has actually gone down in California since this. So what do you say to that? I question the numbers. Most of the chiefs that I'm speaking with don't agree with that. Most will say that I don't believe that certain crimes are down. If you look at even San Francisco, which is reporting a downward trend, homicides are up. I believe that's the ultimate crime you can't come back from, and they're experiencing an increase in homicides. So I would challenge those numbers and look into them and start doing a deep dive, because this is occurring across the country, not only in Fresno, but most major cities across the country. We're seeing huge spikes in crime. So the $0 bail thing, that expired, that order that came down from the state expired, and then here locally, a $0 bail went into effect. So it wouldn't necessarily be the state decision, it would be a local decision that happened here on the county level.
I'm not sure I understand exactly whose decision it was. It was my understanding the Judicial Council was the one implementing that statewide. I know it has not been released. If we catch somebody with a gun right now and we book them into jail, they are right back on the street before we can put that gun into evidence.
And when it comes to the committee, obviously there are former members of law enforcement on that committee. It's a very diverse committee. I mean, no decision has come out of there yet. So you're talking about defunding. Is this, where is that coming from? Since no decision has been made yet.
I'm not talking about the committee talking about defunding. I'm talking about a lot of the media is talking about defunding. A lot of our community leaders across the country are talking about defunding. That's been the mantra of a lot of community activists. I believe that we can do some really good out of this commission, that we can have some reform and we can make some big changes that can occur. Unfortunately, some people on that committee have made statements condoning illegal activity, condemning the police. And I don't think that's healthy to appoint somebody to a committee that starts out at that level. We can have a discussion on this. We can do better. We want to do better. We believe in community policing. We believe that we can reform. The police department is the community. We work for the community. I don't believe the entire community is being served by this committee. The lack of support from some of our elected officials and some people on this committee, not all of them, is alarming. And it should alarm everybody in the community. And when you look at these increases in violent crime rates, most of which are occurring in the south portion of the city, it should be alarming to the entire community. And what's unfortunate is this commission hasn't even brought up the issue of violent crime in our city. And that should concern all of us.
I mean, there are a lot of people who have some sort of law enforcement background, whether it's right now or in the past on that. Do you think it should be made up of mostly law enforcement? Because wouldn't that kind of defeat the purpose of who would you like to see on that committee and who would you like to not see on that committee? Well,
I think that if you're going to advocate for violence in our community or any community, that should be a disqualifier. It certainly would be a disqualifier to be a police officer. We would terminate somebody who advocated violence in our community. So that should be the first level. But I think it should be people and leaders, not only leaders, but just people in the community. The people who work every day, who take their kids to school and just try to get by should have a voice. And I don't believe they have that voice right now. What we have is activists and people who have an agenda sit on this committee.
And I believe that we need to really look at the silent majority, the people that aren't getting a voice in this community. And I hope that we will start bringing the issue of crime, maybe supporting our police department. It's not really fair to judge us by something that occurred 3,000 miles away. Can we do better? Absolutely. Do I want to do better? We all want to do better. We all want to have a safer community. But defunding and depolicing the community is not the way to go. And we can see that by zero bail and early releases. And we're seeing that spike. I just think the discussion needs to be made, and I'm in a position to make it, and I'm going to do it.
When you were talking there about violence that's being promoted, what exactly are you alluding to?
Well, I'll leave that to the investigative reporters with the media. I'm not going to get into the exact words, and I'll leave that for you to dig up. It's not very hard to do, and it's been out there in public. But I believe that I do have a concern when somebody does advocate violence, and they sit on a commission that's going to direct the future of policing in this city. I have a big concern about that. And I think we should all be concerned about that, and we should look into it. I know that we monitor Facebook pages of our officers, and if they say or do something on a social media platform, they are disciplined or terminated as a result.
So what exactly would you like to see come out of this? What would be ideal? You said in your post community policing, but that requires more funding for the department. What did you mean by that, and what exactly would you like to see come out of this?
Based on nearly every city in the country, by comparison, Fresno is underfunded. We do not have sufficient numbers of police officers for the number of citizens we have in the community or the level of crime. Our first priority is to respond to crime. However, I would love to have officers on bicycles. I would love to have foot patrols and people on horseback in our communities. I would love to be able to go and play, have my officers play kickball with kids in the projects so that we can grow up with kids. I used to do that when I came on. I've been here 40 years in this organization. I have a lot of experience. You think this commission would ask me maybe for my opinion? I haven't been invited to meet with any of the commission members or the committees at all. So I really have a concern that this commission is agenda driven, and they don't really want to hear from police. And I think it's important that the community reach out and support its police officers. And the fact is community policing takes money. It requires resources to do properly, and we've never done it properly. We try to do it as much as we can. We go out and we do community events as much as we can, but a dedicated community policing, I hope that this commission has the wherewithal and the foresight to move forward. But that's going to cost money, and that's not the direction that I'm hearing.
Do you have any concern on, obviously the jail has been releasing people for that $0 bail, but what about the overcrowding and them releasing people just based on overcrowding? Is that a concern for you too?
It goes right back to funding. What's our priority? Is our priority holding people accountable for crime? And if it is, then we have to fund that. Listen, my officers go out every day and risk their lives to go ahead and arrest people for violent crime. The DA's office spends hours prosecuting those crimes. And the taxpayers, they spend millions getting them into custody, only to be released back into our streets by elected officials that don't work the streets, that aren't in these communities, that aren't in these poor neighborhoods. Those are the ones that are effective, and it's shameful that this is occurring. And if we don't get ahead of this, we're going to lose control of our cities.
Do you happen to, I know you guys pulled some statistics when it came to this post, do you happen to have any statistics on how many of these crimes occurred because of releases that happened within this COVID period?
I don't. I have reports that it's occurring. Again, I believe that's the media's responsibility to look into this. They should be doing this. It's really not the police department's job to do that kind of research. Our job is to go respond to crime and to address it. I'm telling you, the media, that crime is going up. It's going up at alarming rates in a very short time. And if we don't get ahead of this, we're going to lose control, and it's going to be very difficult to get back. I am telling you that it corresponds identically with when we stop holding people accountable, when we stop booking them into jail, when we let them out of prisons. It's not a really difficult job to do, to go out and find out who's been rebooked back into the jails.